This week on Dig Me Out.
It's got one of the worst lyrics I've ever heard.
What's the worst lyric ever?
Don't make my mouth water. Don't make me want to slaughter.
Yes.
It's
But
like,
then
what?
the rest of it, what happens after that? It gets better.
I don't even know.
Don't make me want the water. Don't make me want to slaughter.
Tim and Jay review Stereotype A by Cibo Matto.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dig Me Out. I'm your host Tim Minichi, and joining me once again for episode 161 of season 4, Mr. Jason Ziek. Jay.
Yeah.
We are joined on this episode by a very special guest. And this is actually a person who has been on almost every episode secretly.
Secretly?
Well, not secretly. That's not the way to put it. It's a person that has appeared on every episode, but we haven't actually really addressed it. And that's my wife, Katie, who does all of the jingles for our episode. She does the opening episode, and she does opening of each episode, and she does the history of the band, and she does the closing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that.
Welcome to the show, Katie.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm in my own home, so sure. Thanks. Hey, Jay.
You ventured down to the basement.
Yeah, it's a good basement.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what Tim does down there.
Got a radon detector.
We're good down here. And this is an album that Katie is fond of, and it perfectly lined up with the timing of a new release by this band. And I'm speaking of Cibo Matto, who have a new album out this week called Hotel Valentine, just in time for Valentine's Day. And I thought, what a great opportunity to revisit one of the more unique bands of the 1990s, and that's Cibo Matto. So, Jay, were you familiar at all with Cibo Matto?
Yeah. I knew of the band, and I knew of the chicken song, but that's about it.
It's important to know your chicken.
That's right,
That's
your
all.
chicken.
Yep.
I actually didn't really know that song.
So, Katie, I brought you in because you had said previously, you'd like to join us on an episode, and there was a couple albums that you were interested in.
We can't seem to convince Jay to revisit the Mazzy Star collection. So
well, we did a Mazzy Star album, and we did, and actually you wanted to join us on Jimmy Eat World's Clarity, but we did that with Tom Mullen from the Washed Out Emo podcast.
And I would have liked to have met Sean Smith.
Yeah, and that one too. So there's been a number of episodes we've done that possibly you could have joined us for, but we went with other guests instead.
Thanks.
And
that feels good.
We went
That
with more
just feels
important
good.
people.
No, yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks.
so we're bringing you on. We're bringing you aboard.
Because you couldn't find anyone else.
Because members of Cibo Matto wouldn't join us for this episode.
Sean Lennon was busy.
Yeah, Sean Lennon was busy being the son of John Lennon. And we're going to talk about Cibo Matto's sophomore release, Stereotype A. So, Katie, how did you discover Cibo Matto and this album?
Well, that's an interesting question, Tim. I do have sort of a high fidelity, very nostalgic story that goes with this because,
Do tell.
From northeast Ohio. It's really northwest Ohio, but whatever. I was from Lorain, as Jay is, Amherst, and we used to drive into the Lakewood area because that's where you went if you were interesting. And we would go to Barnes & Noble, which was probably really more like Avon Lake, and it's pretty exciting to go to the Barnes & Noble on Saturday night. I was that kid, and I remember picking up a copy of CMJ, the magazine.
College Music Journal.
Right. And I probably was a junior in high school. And the song Sci-Fi Wasabi was on a mix that month for CMJ. And that was actually how I discovered Cibo Matto. So I was just used to playing that little mix while I did homework and things. And then when I was a senior in high school, I actually saw them with Luscious Jackson. I still have yet to figure out who I saw them with. I even put this to Facebook, and no one seems to remember who went with me. But I know I went because I came home with a tank top.
Were you not wearing any clothing when you went?
Yeah. Yeah. It was that kind of show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jay, what do you remember at our radio station WFAL playing some Cibo Matto on the radio, or did you discover them through MTV, or what was your entree into Cibo Matto?
MTV, I think. Well, I think it was at the same time. The Know Your Chicken song, I believe, was played on FAL, and then I think I saw the video for it at the time. I remember it being kind of a novelty sort of thing. At least that's the way it felt to me. So, and I was aware of this record. I'd seen the album cover and sort of knew that they continued to be on the one song and would continue to release music, but that's all I really knew about them.
And like you, I knew them because of Know Your Chicken, which was played in heavy rotation at our radio station in college, and I actually didn't follow up with them. I didn't know this record until we started reviewing it. I knew maybe a single, but I didn't know the whole album. So.
I also saw the Beastie Boys when I was a junior, and I remember them mentioning Cibo Matto.
Right, because they were on the same label,
right?
Grand Royal.
Yeah.
So let's get into a little history of Cibo Matto.
History of the band.
So Cibo Matto formed in New York City by Yuka Honda and Miho Hattori in 1994. Cibo Matto means crazy food in Italian. Yeah. In 1995, Cibo Matto released their self-titled EP on El Diablo Records. EP caught the attention of Warner Brothers Records, who signed Cibo Matto later that year, and they released the album Viva la Woman. The single Sugar Water was a modest college radio hit, and the song was accompanied by a video directed by Michael Gondry, who would go on to direct a number of very significant independent films, such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. In 1997, Cibo Matto released the EP entitled Super Relax. And on that EP, they were joined by Sean Lennon, which we mentioned earlier, who's the son of John Lennon, along with Timo Ellis and Duma Love. They went on to release their second album, Stereotype A, which we are reviewing, in 1999. And they continued to play live and tour until disbanding in 2002. They were united on March 18, 2011, to perform as a part of a benefit concert for the victims of the 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunami. And in May of 2011, they announced a U.S. reunion tour called Yeah, Basically Cibo Matto. In 2013, in June, the band played the Meltdown Festival in London and announced that their new album would be released in 2014. And so promised, their third album, Hotel Valentine, will be released on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. So that is the history of Cibo Matto. If you want to suggest a band for us to review, of course, visit our request review page at digmeoutpodcast.com. We did get some Facebook feedback on this record. Mr. Sean Morton says, love this album. Dimitri Dummitry said, I just bought it for £2. I don't know what that translates into in terms of dollars, but I think that's like $4 or $5.
I think it's like $342.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
I think Jay's right about that.
I think that Jay's right.
Yeah.
And he said, I'd better take a listen and get back to you. So we're waiting to hear back from Dimitri on this album.
I look forward to hearing from him.
I do too. Scott Russell Halgram says, my takeaway from this album is that the songs are cute, but too long. And there are too many of them. And then, holy God, come to find out that the Japanese version is even 2 songs longer. Seriously, can you imagine anybody listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's the perfect amount of content for what we have to say. Don't cut a thing. Cut every song off at the midpoint, and I think I'd like this quite a bit. And David Dirty Gert Gorgos says, all I know about this band is that I like to torture people with Know Your Chicken.
Dirty Gert.
Dirty Gert. Long-time listener, frequent contributor, one-time guest, chiming in on this album. and Cibo Matto. So let's get into the album. Let's go track by track. Let's break this sucker down and start with track number 1, Working for a Vacation. Katie, let's start with you. Working for a Vacation. Tell me, what did you think revisiting this album, opening it up with track number 1, Working for a Vacation?
I enjoy this first track. It got a thumbs up from me. I think it sets a good tone, and I think it is the proper introduction to the band. This is them at their best, I think. I enjoy this song.
Jay?
Yeah, I don't mind this song. I like the bass line, pretty decent. I don't love the verses, but I do like the harmonies in the chorus. And it's definitely a distinct sound. So I think it's a good start for the record.
I think it's an interesting opener because it kind of sets the tone that they play with a lot of different genres of music. This has an elements of like reggae or reggaeton, and they bounce around from different sounds from song to song, and the opener sort of gives you a taste of that. I think it's a nice mid-tempo track from them. I don't think it's the strongest in terms of their melodies. I think that they get to those later on in the album, but I think it's a decent opener. Spoon, however, I think is where they start to show off like their ability to their songwriting ability. Really catchy, has it really cool like acoustic guitar solo in it. What do you guys think?
I like when they mention food. Usually they're doing well if they mention food, and they do in this song. I like, not only do they have an acoustic guitar solo, but it's horns into piano into acoustic guitar, and that was fun. So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Yeah, this is too lounge for me. By the time you get to the horns and the piano, and it's just, I don't know, it's a little too jazzy and not really my thing. I prefer the first song, which I think it starts to get near that, but it doesn't go over the line, and this starts to go over the line, especially with the sort of the waka waka guitar, and it just has all the lounge stereotypes.
It's funny you mention the lounge aspect because the drummer on a lot of this album is the drummer from Soul Coughing. So there's a crossover element, obviously with Sean Lennon's Into the Sun album. There's a lot of sort of Beatlesque pop involved, which I don't think necessarily translates as much as the Soul Coughing element, which has that loungy sort of beat poet sound. And I think this particular song, Spoon, definitely like has a Soul Coughing sort of element to it. I like it a lot. I think the vocal is what really makes the song, and I think it has a cool bass line as well. And I think the bass playing on this record is really cool. A lot of people listen to this album, they probably think, well, this is a lot of samples and this, but actually this was not all, but quite a bit of this album was played live and then looped in the same way that like with the Beastie Boys would do with like Check Your Head or Ill Communication, where they would sort of jam and then pick parts out and then loop those parts to make a song. So they're live parts, but they're actually looped as a recording experiment. I think that transitions well into the next album, which is Flowers, which has this sort of Stereolab kind of Brazilian pop sort of sound. I don't know if it's bossa nova.
It's bossa nova.
Yeah, it has a bossa nova feel.
My note says bossa nova.
Okay, well, you're more musically educated than myself and Jay. So break down the bossa nova for us. What does that mean exactly?
Well, don't blame it on the bossa nova.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. 60-year-olds will.
We have a lot of 60-year-olds listening to that.
I'm sure you do. There are a couple bossa nova tracks on this one. I think this one works. The other ones do not, that come later. I think because of tempo. I also think because this has some good harmonies in it. Overall, I think, anytime they balance that like quirky rap speak beat that they do versus a chorus where they sing, usually goes well. That's the formula that I think works for them, which is why I like these first 4 tracks.
Jay, how's the bossa nova working for you?
You know, I can't help but like when I listen to it to think of like, you know, on an old Casio keyboard, if you hit the bossa nova rhythm maker, like it would sound exactly like this.
Yeah.
So while I like the idea of using a bossa nova beat as the core, like, I don't know, I just struggle with, do you have to have all of the elements of bossa nova? Like, do you have to have the, you know, the organ part and the full band doing it? Could you like, so I just get thrown by that. I do like I didn't realize this band did harmonies. So I think that works really well in the chorus. I think the melody of the chorus and the harmony of the chorus is pretty unexpected and works pretty well. But I have a hard time with this one getting over the music.
Well, let's get to track 4, which is Lint of Love. I had a hard time with this song only in that it's way too long. It's 6 minutes and 10 seconds. And they go into what I want to call the satchel ending, which is they turn into a metal song at the end. Reminds me of like a Satchel song in a way, where you have this like groove-oriented tune, and then all of a sudden you mix in this metal guitar that comes out of nowhere. Sean Smith would have been able to handle this a lot better. It's actually not a bad song. It's just way too long, and could have ended it at about 4 minutes. I mean, this was a good pop song, and I even like the sort of lyrical content. Lint of Love, having this like leftover of a relationship in your pocket that you're carrying around, but they just did not know where to edit this song, and it carries on, and it almost ruined it for me. I'm going to give them, because I like the song, I'm going to give it to them. But I don't know, what did you guys think about Lint of Love?
Yeah, it's like they can't, you know, they had a nice little verse chorus kind of rhythm thing, and then they just keep playing it over and over again, and it sounds like they just have like guests come in the studio who play different instruments and rap and do different things, and just have them like add a part and then add another part and add another part, and 6 minutes later, like, okay, we got a song now. So, you know, I think at like 2.5 minutes I would have been good, but you know, 6 minutes in, you're like, okay, you guys are out of friends who play instruments and sing and rap, so I guess we can wrap the song up. It's a little overboard.
Yeah, I agree. This is the first track that I just didn't really like. I think the chorus is okay. The hook is okay. It's got a cute sentiment, like you said, Tim. But I just think overall, even the first 4 minutes are still pretty forgettable. Sometimes their tempo is an issue. It can dirge along instead of having intensity. And, you know, I understand having a slower tempoed song, but it just doesn't work for me.
Well, speaking of slower tempos, we have Moonchild at track 5. And this is where the band goes into a Sade sort of mode, I thought. I think it's a pretty astounding song because it's so melodic and so pretty. And if you listen to the first record, you'd have no idea that this band was capable of a song like Moonchild, which really sounds like it could be on a Sade record. Sounds nothing like the samples that in keyboard-driven stuff that's on the first record, Viva La Woman. I in listening to this record, I was like I thought this was a cover. I was like, there's no way this band could have written this song because it's so pretty and so melodic. And I found out that this actually was an original song by them, which made me think, well, how was this not like a huge single? But then I remember this came out in like 1999 or whatever year it was. It was 1999. So there was no chance of this being a single. Maybe a couple years earlier, this could have been a single.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I didn't realize the year on this. I would have guessed this was a mid 90s record.
Right.
I guess I'll just continue my thought on the song, but this is my favorite of the songs we've gone through so far. The thing that I wish they would have done though is I don't think you need the bass and the drums in this song, or at least not the way they're done. Like I think they get in the way of the vocal and you're right, Tim, the melody, which is really pretty nice and surprising. And I don't know. They're just. I think they're most of the song. I'm like, I wish I could just turn the bass and the drums off because they're not really adding anything for me, other than giving it like a Sade vibe, which melodically, it would go on a whole. It would feel completely different if you just had the acoustic guitar and maybe some softer rhythm and the vocal, and I think I would like it a lot more.
That's an interesting point. To be honest, I listened to my second listen of this one was on my phone, so there's a good chance I just didn't really hear the percussion. But I did. This is probably one of my favorite tracks of the entire album. As an alto, this definitely has the
an alto.
Well, I am. This definitely has the range that I think just like falls into that like theory of good vowels. Like it doesn't really matter what they're saying. Although I do like the lyrics, I don't really think it matters what they're saying. This just like falls in the perfect range for most guys or girls to sing along in the car, and that's really when you get a good single, I think, regardless of content sometimes. But the melody is beautiful and it's easy to sing along with, and yeah, I really like this one.
I think what actually makes the song is not necessarily the Moonchild part, but like the part after that, where it's like it's like it has that like sass to it, which that's where you get hooked on the song. Yeah, it's a really, I guess, surprising song from a band that on the next song goes into what I would consider the more traditional Cibo Matto sound, which is sci-fi wasabi. It has that like 1960s horn James Bond feel to it, with the rap of Yuka Honda. I think it's Yuka Honda who's doing the most of the singing. I'm not sure. I'm always confused because one of the band members, I think it's Yuka Honda, is the singer. I might be wrong about this. And then Miho Hattori is like primarily the producer musician of the band, but that might be reversed. It might be Yuka Honda who's more the producer. I'm not sure, but it's not well defined in the notes in Wikipedia or anything like that. This to me transitions like more closer to the Viva La Woman first album, with like hip hop mixed with samples, mixed with sort of a pop culture / food take on 90s culture. I think the horns are really cool, and there's not a lot of bands that were able to utilize horns or horn samples in a really interesting way in the 90s, so I appreciate that. Jay, I'm curious as to your take, because I don't necessarily think of you as being a big fan of horn samples.
No. I mean, they sound like the horn. I mean, the horn sound on a keyboard. But the one thing I do like about this song is that there is like a dark sort of I don't know if it's a guitar or some sort of keyboard that's brought into the verses in the chorus that I do like quite a bit. I mean, I love contrast, so when you take their sort of cute vocal style and contrast it with something that's kind of dark and menacing sounding, I think that's a good mix. I wish they did it more on the record, actually. So I like that part of it, but it's got some of the, like you mentioned, it felt familiar with the chicken song. So it has sort of that like novelty appeal of all the pop culture stuff mixed with the, cute Japanese vocal and that whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. This is the track that brought me to them. So I'm partial.
This was the CMJ sampler track?
Yeah. I really enjoy the song. To me, this is how I identify with the band. So I really feel like when they're doing things well, you don't think about it. So in this song, I just really enjoy the song. On other tracks, like the next one, for example, I feel like...
Oh, Katie making the segue.
Oh. Segue.
Back up, Tim.
But, on that next track, I feel like it stands out. It sounds like an experiment. As someone who went through college and had composition and theory classes, to me sometimes, like, it's almost laughable how much this whole album just, to me, sounds like good and bad examples of someone's composition homework. Like, go out and write me a bossa nova song. Okay. And then they come back with a track, right? So Sci-Fi Wasabi doesn't sound like that to me at all. Like, it's a cohesive song. I enjoy it for what it is. I move on. But then when you go on to Clouds, it's just like stands out to me like somebody was sitting at a keyboard playing, and it just falls apart and doesn't work for me. Yeah,
it's a wordless, for the most part, dream pop. I would put it as a description. It has a dreamy element to it, but it almost has like background music element to it. It's not necessarily one of the stronger tracks on the record. Perhaps if there was a better vocal on top of it, it would be more interesting, but it's not one of the ones that I flagged as being like something I want to listen to again. What about you, Jay?
I completely disagree with both of you.
Oh.
This is one of my favorite songs on the record. I think because it's not a great, from a songwriting standpoint, there's not a whole lot here, but I like the sounds. I like that they add that weird effect on the vocal and mix that with like this broken rhythm beat kind of thing. I like they break into harmony for the chorus, which is kind of dreamy and weird. I don't know, I just kind of like it has some elements of like there's moments where it sounds like Cardigans-esque, but like in a weird chopped up way. And I don't know, it is a little bit of an experiment, but I just like it sonically. I just think it sounds interesting. And there's some other tracks on the record that I think are background music-y as well, but at least this one is adventurous, I guess, and a little different. So yeah, I dug it.
Well, then I'm curious as to your feelings on track 8, Speechless, because to me this gets as close to Luscious Jackson as they do on the entire record. Has a pretty straightforward chorus that you can identify. Some of the other songs you can't necessarily identify where the chorus is, like with Clouds. But this is pretty straightforward. Has a loungy, laid back feel to it, although it has the drums, especially the hi-hat percussion, is takes the forefront on the record, and it's pretty pronounced. But the rest of the song is sort of laid back. But this is one of the songs that I highlighted as being, in terms of melody and in terms of something that I could remember from the record, this was one of the highlights of the album. Sorry, I'm 3 beers into a bourbon ale here, so I'm gonna mispronounce some words. What did you guys think about Speechless?
Go for it, Jay.
When it starts off, my note was it sounds like the worst Sade song ever written.
Me too. Oh, Jay.
You guys are jerks.
and then it switches to Luscious Jackson song.
Please don't take me to your fire. I'm not free. I don't want to lose my shoes. Do you? You do. I go through your taboo. You do. Now I'm so blue. Don't make my mouth water. Don't make me want to slaughter. If you give me a dishwasher, don't clean my life with your style. Don't make my mouth water. Don't make me want to slaughter. If you give me a dishwasher, don't clean my life with your style. I'm so speechless. I saw something you've never known. Speechless. I saw something you've never shown. Speechless. I saw something you've never known. Speechless. I saw something you've never shown.
It's got one of the worst lyrics I've ever heard.
What's the worst lyric ever?
Don't make my mouth water. Don't make me want to slaughter.
Yes.
It's
But
like,
then
what?
the rest of it, what happens after that? It gets better.
I don't even know.
Don't
That-
make me want the water. Don't make me want to slaughter. I don't remember what's after that.
The next two lyrics are equally ridiculous because I almost wrote it out. We might have to look that up. You might be right, Jay. I did. I wrote in my notes rhapsodic for this one.
What does that mean?
You saw me crying, but now my eyes are dry. I mean, that's a good line. It negates the stupidness of don't make
No,
me
it's
slaughter.
still pretty stupid.
Slaughter.
We have to find the lyric.
Don't make me want to slaughter. It's like, what?
You have to find the rest of it. Come on.
It struck me with like just searching for words that rhyme, like with no meaning whatsoever.
Yeah. That
Slaughter,
happens a lot.
slaughter.
Don't make my mouth water. Don't make me want to slaughter. If you give me a dishwasher, don't clean my life with your style.
Yes, the dishwasher.
You're right. The second half is worse.
See?
Wow.
But this is a good line. You want quantity, I want quality. How can I get up and go through this tragedy? There's no remedy in my satchel. Satchel! It all comes back to satchel.
Oh, Timothy.
You say so.
He puts on a front, but really he has like the heart of a 12-year-old girl. Listen to these deep lyrics.
Let's get into King of Silence.
Well, I was going to explain rhapsodic to
Okay,
Jay.
go rhapsodic. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, think like Rhapsody in Blue, which you probably don't know. So let me go into the rock. Shut up. Bohemian Rhapsody. Okay? That's a song that has distinct sections. It changes mood in the middle of the song.
Like Paranoid Android.
Yes, Paranoid Android is rhapsodic. Okay. So I feel like, you know, that opening section, and then there are like 2 or 3 different distinct parts of this song. And I think that's what makes it work. It's interesting because it's long as well. So for it to be long, at least it did something interesting. Does that make sense, Jay?
I feel you.
I did have a question for you and Jay, for Tim and Jay.
Sure.
Because you've recorded before. I feel like overall, some of the weaker songs have a really even mix. Like the vocals need to come out a little more. Is that intentional, do you think, or just bad mixing, or what is that?
Well, that's what I was talking about with Moonchild. You know, it's just to me that the melody is. It's almost like there's a lack of confidence there, and they want to put like they want to mix up the big, you know, the drum machine.
Yeah.
You know, and throw that in your face because there's a little bit of like maybe not feeling confident about the vocal.
Right.
That would be my guess. Usually, if you hear a record like that, you know, it's a band that's not confident in their vocals.
Sure. Yeah, I think that comes across, unfortunately.
I also think that this comes across as an album that is not necessarily cohesive in terms of who was contributing. I think there's definitely some Sean Lennon inspired experimentation, which comes in towards more towards the end of the record. Yeah, there's definitely an unevenness to a lot of the production. But one of the songs that I do like is King of Silence, track 9. It has this like 70s soul groove to it. Kind of reminded me of like a Curtis Mayfield or a Isaac Hayes style like 70s groove. Laid back, not necessarily one of the more aggressive songs on the record, but I enjoyed it. What'd you guys think?
I did not. This was one where...
Get out.
You know, it's my house too. This was one, you know, as we were just talking, I feel like it was probably too even a mix, probably covering up the fact that they don't really shine when they just sing. I feel like there was too much just singing on this one, and they lost that quirkiness. There just isn't a strong enough lead vocal to carry this song.
Yeah, especially when as they go into the chorus, they do that run. It's like I don't know, it's almost a falsetto or something, but there's some notes in there where you're like, eh, you know, as she like works her way up into the chorus. And
yeah,
you know, I think to your point, they're best when they're not they're at their best when the song isn't relying just on their vocal, which I mean, it is counter to what I just talked about with Moonchild, but I think what you described it, that song is, you know, in a key or it's in a key or something that it's easier for them to sing, and they pull it off, and it's layered and you don't notice it as much, whereas this one, you know, it needs a good vocal to pull this off. Otherwise it's just sort of like a phoned in, you know, lounge song. And this is one of the ones where I mentioned it feels a little bit like a music bed or just a background music, and this is one of the ones that I think is weaker than something like Clouds, which is at least experimental.
Well, I'm curious what you guys have to say about track 10, which is Blue Train, which to me is the worst song on the record and probably one of the worst songs I've ever heard. It's Cibo Matto trying to do a metal song, but with no metal chops. It's just sort of this dirge of a metal riff, like 3 or 4 chords, not much in terms of melody, and it's just awful experimentation for the sake of experimentation. I hope you guys are on the same page with me. I hope you guys aren't going to be like, this is the best song on the record. So I'm going to just question your sanity.
I think it's fun.
Oh,
I was
God.
entertained. It's not a good song.
No.
But it's like the essence of who they are. Like you expect quirkiness, you expect the unexpected. So as a track, I see it as fun. I don't take it seriously. And I do think it's almost more punk than it is metal. That chorus is just goofy. I don't know, it makes me laugh.
I actually agree with both of you. I kind of get it, but it's not a great song, like as a song, you know, and it certainly doesn't need to be as long as it is.
It would have been a great Flight of the Conchords song.
Yeah, it would have been. Actually, I like the. I like the sound of their sort of cute vocal sound, and like the fact that their voices are a little higher, and that mixed with like a dirgy kind of guitar. That's kind of an interesting idea. Unfortunately, this isn't a very good song.
No.
But
Right.
it holds my attention for a little while to just see where it's going to go. At least, you know, when it popped up on the record, I was like, "Oh, where are we going with this?" And then it doesn't. You know, it speeds up at the
Right.
end, but for the most part, it's that same riff.
But this is where Sean Smith, and I mentioned Satchel earlier, knows how to handle this sort of riff, or knows how to handle this sort of sound, where he can play both in that like piano ballad territory, and then he can also move into like a heavier, you know, dirgy guitar riff territory, and equally handle both of them.
It reminded me of that other band that he's in. Is it Hail something?
All
the
Hail
King?
the Crown.
Yeah, it actually did remind me of them, like a less sophisticated version of that band.
But he has a history, like he understands Van Halen and he understands metal music, so he's able to like craft the proper vocal and proper melody on top of that. Whereas this sounds like a band sort of fooling around, on an afternoon. Oh, look, this is funny. This is a metal riff, and let's sort of screw around with that. Whereas when he does it, he's taking it seriously, and he's like, I'm bringing, my experience with Van Halen, and to understand what to do with this sort of a riff. It just, it actually annoyed me. At this point of his record, I was like, you better follow it up with something really good, because I'm losing interest really fast. Luckily, I think Sunday Part 1 and to a lesser extent Sunday Part 2 sort of redeem them. It's a good sort of pop follow-up. And then the Sunday Part 2 it's a little bit of a slower song, so it doesn't necessarily work as well. But if you had ended it right there, I think I would have been okay. Unfortunately, they didn't. They went into the slow bossa nova of Stone, and then this experimental nonsense of Mortingming, or whatever you want to, however that's pronounced.
What are you doing? You're spoiling all the rest of the record.
Yeah. Are you just
No.
Did you just go down a playground slide? What was that? It's so fast.
I'm curious what you guys think about the end of the record, because to me, Sunday Part 1 and Part 2 are pretty solid songs, but the end of the record sort of disintegrates, and I'm curious what you guys think.
I did not like either part, Sunday Part 1 or 2. I thought they were okay. To me, it was just fizzling out.
Yeah.
And I was struggling on Sunday Part 1 on whether or not those were samples. What was going on there? I feel like there was some sampling happening, but it was intermittent.
I found Sunday Part 1 just kind of a little too predictable for them.
Yeah.
I don't know, just seemed like at this point in the record, what I would expect them to be doing. And it sounds a little less, it's not as inspired as something like Sci-Fi Wasabi.
They definitely sounded like B-sides to me.
Yeah. And I think Part 2 is just boring. I would like it if I was trying to fall asleep. I would put it on and I'd fall asleep to it.
Right.
It's just not a whole lot there. I did like Stone. It's actually one of the I highlighted 4 songs from the record. It's the 4th song I highlighted. And is this bossa nova too?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a little more subtle.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like is the muffled trombone, the sad trombone.
Right.
Not a fan of that. But if you took out the sad trombone,
Wah, wah.
Oh.
I actually kind of like it. It's like a sweet, kind of slower song. And I think the vocals are pretty decent on it.
Yeah, see, I felt like it was just a couple clicks away from dreamy. Kind of fell into sluggish for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just wasn't quite enough. It was close. Stone was close. There were things that I liked about it, but it just kind of dragged for me.
I thought in terms of the 2 tracks that utilized that bossa nova feel, that it didn't
It was not the winner.
It was not the winner. Yeah.
You guys are wrong.
Okay, well. there you
Sorry.
go.
Sweet. Well, thanks for
I mean, there are
clearing that
winners
up.
and losers, and that's life.
She doesn't have an umbrella to cover herself. She's got a living stone and painting her mind. All I can do is sing for her and myself. I wish I can take you away to 3,000 light years away. I wish I can take it away to 3,000 light years away. Don't be afraid. I'll be next to you.
So, Jay, tell us why you loved Mortming, the experimental closing track.
I called this My only note on this is that it should be called Farting Around with the Mellotron.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is like the only redeeming thing about this is the Mellotron, which I love as an instrument, but it just sounds like they just got one in the studio and they hit record and
Yep.
they sat around and just farted around with it for a couple minutes and recorded it and put it on the record.
I love that phrase, farting around. It's such a gem of our vernacular.
Pretty much. So we've gone through the entire album.
You didn't even ask me if I liked it.
I don't care.
Oh,
You've pretty
I'll
much
remember that later.
You've pretty much you've given us your feelings.
I had
on
a point.
it. What was your point?
Well, I just feel like this doesn't stand up. This one doesn't hold past the 90s because it was very 90s to do like that deconstructive outro.
Exactly.
And it reminded me a little bit of the last track of Clarity, only that track works for me.
Yeah, and we've
See,
covered this.
I had relevant information.
We've covered this on previous episodes, but the
But this is
experimental
a very special episode.
experimental outro track is a reoccurring theme
It's
for
so
90s
90s.
albums. It's very 90s, and it's very repetitive, and it's very annoying.
Yeah.
And you're right, Jimmy Eat World did do it better and more successfully rather than
They did most things more successfully.
than Cibo Matto. So Jimmy Eat World made a great album, and this is not a great album. This is an album that we're gonna rate now. We're gonna rate it on our patents pending scale of worthy album, better EP, and decent single. I'm curious as to where you guys landed. Is this a worthy album, or would this have been better as an EP or a single? Katie, I'm gonna start with you because this is an album that you have championed for a long time. So, did it stand up? Was it a worthy album?
I went with EP on this one.
Boom! Not a worthy album.
Drop the hammer.
So, what songs would you put on the EP?
Okay, let's go through my list here. My EP would consist of Working for Vacation, Spoon, Flowers, Moonchild, Sci-Fi Wasabi, Speechless, and Blue Train.
So you got a 7-song EP. That's a strong EP right there. Jay, how about you? EP, album, single, where you land?
I have 4 songs highlighted, so I'll go with EP. Moonchild, Sci-Fi Wasabi, Clouds, and Stone.
Interesting. So I got Working for Vacation, Spoon, Lint of Love, Moonchild, Sci-Fi Wasabi, Speechless, King of Silence, and Sunday Part 1. I think I'm at an album.
Holy.
Oh.
I think I'm going to disagree with you guys. I think you guys are wrong.
Well, that's a horse of a different color.
Because that puts me at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a 1970s album right there. That's a Rush album. And
Because their songs are 12 minutes long.
Right.
And they're about wizards.
Right, exactly. This is a song about food, and it's or an album about food and various other
Dishwashers.
things. Dishwashers and lint. So
Don't make me want to slaughter.
They make me want to slaughter. But I'm at 8 songs. I'm going to give them an album. I think it's way too long. I think there's a lot of crap on this record. I think there's much to be trimmed. But at the end of the day, I'm right, and you guys are wrong. So, Katie, welcome to the fold, as they would say in filter.
Did you want another beer?
No, I've had enough beer.
Yeah, I'd say.
3 deep into my bourbon ales. So that's our review of Cibo Matto and their album Stereotype A. They have a new album out this week, Hotel Valentine. I haven't heard anything off of it yet, but I'm sure there are songs about food. I would guarantee there are songs about food.
Or washing dishes.
Or dishwashing. Or other things. So.
I can't wait.
Jay, are you going to be checking out Hotel Valentine, or are you done with Cibo Matto?
I've done my time.
You've done your time.
Yeah.
You're ready to be released into the world and moved on to.
I can. This is added to who I am, and I can take that and move forward with it and to bigger and better things.
Understood. Well, if any of our listeners have an album they'd like us to review, head on over to our digmeoutpodcast.com page, and you can request a review for us to check out. And of course, if you like what you heard, please consider leaving us some positive feedback at our iTunes page. We greatly appreciate it. Bump us up in the ratings. I was going to call you Kathy.
You almost called me Kathy. Holy shit!
I've had a lot to drink tonight.
Jason.
Wow. What is going on
I'll be
over
there
there?
shortly.
Jeremy and Kathy, thank you for joining tonight.
I'll be getting on a plane later.
Thanks,
Come
Tom.
That's it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're the voice of this podcast. You don't know it, but you are. And
No, I was there.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know I have to harangue Katie into doing the intros for each episode. I'm basically like, hey, would you mind coming down to the basement and recording like 7 intros in a row? She's like, okay.
He always makes me sit on this piano bench. It's really uncomfortable. He sits in this really nice chair.
I do. I have a
Do you
nice
make her do
chair.
all?
My
keep
foot's
doing takes?
asleep right now.
Yeah, I
That
do
wasn't
make her
good
do. No, I'm like, hey, you popped on that particular vowel. Can you redo that?
Do you have
a
like any outtakes of like when Orson Welles went off on that one guy that was trying to creative direct him doing that commercial read or what was the other one? There's another famous one. The guy from Star Trek.
William
What's his
Shatner.
name? Yeah, there's a William Shatner one with the same thing. And the guy's like, could you try doing it? And he just tears the guy down in the funniest way possible.
I
So
give
if there's
him
any
my teacher
outtakes-
face.
She just gives me the face.
My teacher face is menacing.
Yeah. And then I go, okay, that was fine. Let's move on. Never mind. All right, folks. That's it. That's a wrap for Stereotype A Cibo Matto. Episode 161 of season 4 is in the books. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
It's in my way. I feel no goal. Where's my soul? I got no respect for this game. Our name is Stereotype with a name. I've got
Join the conversation about this episode at digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter feed, as well as links to our request a review and merchandise pages.
a on Broadway.